Edna Marsh was 74, lying in a hospital bed with the plastic band still on her wrist, when her children sold the only building she had ever loved for $14,000. Dale told the nurse, smiling, "It's just an old schoolhouse, Mom. Nobody wants a moldy cloakroom." Edna asked for one thing: a crowbar. 3 weeks earlier, she hadn't even known the room had a false wall. This is how she found out. The stroke had come on a Tuesday, over dishes, her right hand going numb around a coffee cup that fell and did not break. 3 weeks in Cutter's Gap. General had given her back most of her words and half her grip. It had not given her back her say in anything. Dale had power of attorney. He'd gotten it 2 years before, quietly, at a lawyer's office in Beckley, the kind of paperwork Edna signed because a son asking felt like love, not like a door closing. She hadn't read every line. She taught reading for 38 years, and she hadn't read every line, and some mornings in that hospital bed she turned that fact over like a stone she couldn't put down. "Mom, you're going to want to hear this sitting up," Dale said, that Thursday morning, pulling the vinyl chair close to her bed. He had his father's height and none of his father's hands. Soft hands, a realtor's hands, hands that shook other hands for a living. "We sold the school." Edna's fingers found the blanket edge. "Sold it," she said. Her voice still dragged on some words: a rope over gravel. Route 9 aggregate. $14,000, Mom. For a condemned building nobody set foot in since Reagan was president. Dale said it like a gift he was handing her. Counties had a mold citation on it for 6 years. Roofs caving over the north end. It was costing us money just standing there. Taxes, insurance, and for what? A coat closet full of dead wasps? "It's not a coat closet," Edna said. "It's a cloakroom." "Sure." Dale didn't look up from his phone. "Whatever you call it." Connie came in behind him, 46 years old, still calling herself Connie Marsh Pruitt on her business cards, though the marriage to Pruitt had ended 9 years back. She set a vase of grocery store carnations on the windowsill without meeting her mother's eyes. "Demolition's Monday," Connie said. "It's already done, Mom." "We signed Tuesday. You were still in the ICU. You signed, Dale signed, he has the authority." Connie said it fast, the way you say a thing you've rehearsed so it won't catch in your throat. It needed to happen. That building's been a liability sitting on that lot since before either of us had kids. There was a rule of 3 of it that Edna would only be able to name later, lying awake. Her husband's school, her husband's cabinets, her husband's cloakroom, all folded into a single line on somebody else's spreadsheet. $14,000. Less than the F-150 Dale had put a down payment on the same week, $6,000 of it gone into a truck bed before the school papers were even dry. $3,400 more had gone to clear a credit card in Connie's name. $2,000 had gone toward a wedding deposit for Connie's daughter, Edna's granddaughter, a girl Edna had taught to read at 4 years old, sounding out words at the kitchen table with her grandfather's ruler for a pointer. The remainder, $2,600, they'd set aside, Dale told her, almost proud of the math. "For your copay, Mom, so you wouldn't have to worry about that part." Edna looked at the ceiling tile above her bed. There was a water stain on it shaped like nothing in particular. "Walton built that cloakroom," she said. "Walton's been gone 11 years, Dale said, gentle now, the gentleness of a man closing a subject. "The building's not a memorial, Mom. It's a liability with your name on the deed. It's got his initials in the doorframe. It's got black mold in the walls." Dale stood, put his phone in his jacket pocket. "I know this is hard to hear, but you weren't in a position to be consulted, and somebody had to make the call. I made the call. It was the responsible thing to do." Nobody in that room said the word stroke, like it meant anything except an excuse for a signature nobody had asked her for. After they left, a nurse named Priya came in to check the monitor and found Edna already reaching, left-handed, for the little spiral notebook she kept on the tray table. It was slow work, her right hand still a stranger to her, but she had a system. Brace the notebook against her hip, work the pen with her left, form each letter like a first grader learning the alphabet again. "Dear Priya," she wrote, "thank you for explaining the medication schedule to me twice without once making me feel foolish for asking. You have a gift for patience. It will serve you your whole career." She had written one like it for every nurse and aide who'd touched her chart in 3 weeks. 17 notes total, each one addressed by name, each one specific, because vague thanks was no thanks at all, and a woman who'd spent 38 years grading essays for lazy praise wasn't about to hand out lazy praise of her own now. Priya read hers standing at the foot of the bed and had to turn away for a second. "Mrs. Marsh, you don't have to do this." "I know," Edna said. "That's rather the point of doing it." It was the sharpest thing anyone had heard her say since the stroke, and Priya laughed before she could stop herself, and something in Edna's chest loosened just slightly, the first easy breath in 3 weeks. She had taught 38 years at Bellwood School, one room, grades 1 through 8 some years, before the county consolidated everyone down the mountain to the new building in 1988 and left Bellwood locked and dark at the edge of Cutter's Gap, out past the Route 9 truss bridge where Bellwood Creek ran loud in the spring and went to a whisper by August. She had married the school's caretaker, Walton Marsh, in 1962, in that same one room, folding chairs borrowed from the Baptist church, her students throwing dried cornflour instead of rice because nobody had rice to spare that year. Walton had built the Cloakroom cabinets himself in the winter of 1961, oak scavenged and planed by hand, a run of coat pegs down one wall for 40 children who owned, between them, maybe 20 coats. He was proud of that room the way some men were proud of a truck or a gun collection. He used to walk Edna through it after the last bus left, tapping the panels like he was checking a heartbeat. "Whatever this town does to that school," he told her once, years before he died, "that cloakroom isn't going anywhere. I made sure of it." She hadn't asked what he meant. He wasn't a man who explained himself twice, and by the time she thought to ask again, he was gone. A heart attack in the garden 11 years back, dead before the ambulance found the turn onto their road. Every fall after that, new students at the consolidated school swore the old Bellwood cloakroom hummed in cold weather, a low sound like a held breath, and every fall the story got passed down as a ghost tale, Miss Edna's dead husband still walking his cabinets. Edna never corrected them. She liked the wind having a story better than the wind having none. Now, Thursday afternoon, alone in a room that smelled like rubbing alcohol and somebody else's dinner tray, she thought about that hum, and about a phrase she hadn't turned over in 11 years, and something in her sat up straighter than her body currently could. She signed herself out against medical advice at 4:15 that afternoon. The resident, a young man not much older than her granddaughter, stood in the doorway reading off the risks in a flat voice: stroke recurrence, blood pressure, the whole list, while Edna nodded and signed the form with her left hand in handwriting that would have earned any of her students a gentle note in the margin. "Mrs. Marsh, I really can't recommend this. You've been very thorough," Edna said. "I've written that down for you already." She had Priya call her a cab, because Dale wasn't answering, and Connie's phone went straight to voicemail, and she rode out Route 9 in the back seat of a Buick that smelled of pine air freshener. Hospital band still looped around her wrist because nobody had thought to cut it off, and she hadn't thought to ask. The road ran along the creek, past the truss bridge, iron gone the orange of a slow-cooked rust, and there, at the bend where the school always came up sudden through the trees, sat a flatbed truck with its engine running and a man in an orange vest leaning against the door of a dozer, waiting on something. Not Monday. Today. "Ma'am, you can't be back here," the man in the vest said, coming around as she got out of the cab, cane in one hand, a manila envelope of sale papers Priya had printed for her tucked under the other arm. "This lot's cleared for demo." "I own it," Edna said. "Not according to what I got." He held up a clipboard like it settled things. "Owner's Route 9 aggregate now. Sale closed Tuesday. I need 1 hour." "Ma'am, 1 hour," Edna said again, and something in her voice, worn thin by 3 weeks and a stroke and a stack of grading nobody would ever see, made the man look at her instead of his clipboard. She was 74 years old, hospital band still on her wrist, cane trembling slightly under a hand that used to hold chalk 8 hours a day, and she was not asking twice. He looked at his watch. "Foreman's not here till 5. Then I have until 5. She walked past him toward the schoolhouse door, the condemned notice still stapled crooked to the frame, and did not look back to see if he'd try to stop her, because she already knew, the way she'd known which students would pass and which would need summer tutoring, that he wouldn't. The building had a smell she'd have known blind. Chalk dust gone stale, damp wood, and under it, faint, the wax Walton used to polish the floor every August before the first bell. The main room was mostly bare, desks long hauled off, but the cloakroom door at the back still hung on its hinges, and above the frame, worn soft by 50 years of small hands touching it on the way in, the initials were still there. W.M. 1961. Edna set the envelope of sale papers down on the windowsill, unopened, and reached into her coat pocket for the crowbar she'd asked the cab driver to stop and buy her at the hardware store on 3rd, $4 and change, the only thing she'd spent that whole strange afternoon. She stood in the cloakroom doorway a long moment, looking at the coat pegs Walton had set with his own hands, and said, out loud, to no one, the way she used to talk to the empty schoolroom after the last bus pulled away. "All right, Walton, show me what you made sure of." Silas Boone heard the dozer idling before he saw it. He'd driven out Route 9, same as every Thursday, checking on his sister's fence line, and there was no missing a flatbed truck parked nose first against the old Bellwood school. He pulled his truck onto the shoulder and sat there a second, engine ticking. 81 years old, and his hands still remembered every nail he'd ever driven into that building. He got out slow, cane of his own tucked under one arm, and walked toward the man in the orange vest. "Somebody selling this place?" Silas asked. "Already sold," the man said. "Lady's inside right now. Says she owns it." Silas looked past him at the door standing open, condemned notice crooked on its staple. "That'd be Edna," he said, and went in without asking permission from anybody. He found her in the cloakroom, coat still buttoned, crowbar hanging loose in her hand like she wasn't sure yet where to put it. She turned when the floor creaked under his boot. "Silas Boone," she said, "I didn't know you still drove out this far." "I didn't know you still discharged yourself from hospitals," he said. "Priya called me, said you left before the doctor cleared you. Priya talks too much. Priya's the only sense in this whole county today." He looked at the crowbar. "What are you doing with that?" "Walton told me something once," Edna said. 11 years ago. I didn't understand it then." Silas came closer, ran a hand along the row of coat pegs, the oak gone dark with age and hand oil. "I helped him hang these," he said. "Winter of '61, coldest one I remember. He said this cloakroom wasn't going anywhere, said he made sure of it." Silas went quiet a moment. He tapped the wall below the pegs, 3 knuckles, listening. "Your husband didn't waste lumber," he said. "Not once, not ever. This wall's thicker than it needs to be." He tapped again, moved his hand 6 inches, tapped a 3rd time. "Hear that," he said. "Hollow there, solid here." Edna set her hand flat against the panel where his had been. The wood felt no different under her palm than any other board in the room, but she'd learned long ago to trust people who knew their materials better than she did. Mechanics, carpenters, doctors, and Silas Boone had built half the barns and porches in Cutter's Gap. "Can you get it open?" she said. "You've got the crowbar." "My grip isn't what it was." Silas didn't ask why. He took the crowbar from her without a word, found the seam at the edge of the panel where a coat peg's mounting plate covered what looked, now that she stared at it, like a hairline gap in the wood grain. He hid the seam under hardware, Silas said, almost to himself. "Man built like an engineer, not a caretaker." The peg's mounting screws came out easy, 4 turns each, and behind the plate sat a notch cut clean into the panel edge, just wide enough for a crowbar tip. "Stand back," Silas said. He worked the bar in, leaned his weight against it, 81 years old and still strong through the shoulders from a life of fence posts and framing. The panel gave with a groan, not a crack, like it had been waiting on this exact motion for 65 years. It swung on a hidden pivot Walton must have shimmed himself, and behind it sat a stud cavity, dark, dry, smelling of cedar shavings gone old. Edna's breath caught. "There," Silas said, "quiet." Inside the cavity sat a tin box, rust freckling its lid, tackle box hinges gone stiff. Silas reached in and lifted it out with both hands like it might be heavier than it looked. It wasn't. It rattled once, soft, something small shifting inside. "That hum the kids always talked about," Silas said. "Every fall since I don't know when. Kids swore this room hummed in cold weather." "Wind," Edna said. "Wind through that hollow." "Wind through your husband's secret," Silas said, and set the box down on the windowsill next to the envelope of sale papers she still hadn't opened. The latch had rusted shut. Silas worked it with a thumbnail, then the flat of a screwdriver he carried in his coat, patient the way he'd always been patient, and it gave with a small metallic groan. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth gone stiff and dark with age, sat two things. The first was a photograph, black and white, gone the color of weak tea, curling at the corners. Edna lifted it out with fingers that shook slightly, not from the stroke this time. It was her and Walton standing in front of the schoolhouse door, her hair dark and pinned back, his arm loose around her shoulders, both of them squinting into a sun that had set on that exact spot sometime in 1962. She remembered the dress. She'd forgotten the sun in her eyes. "Lord," she said, and had to sit down on the windowsill beside the box. "That was your wedding day," Silas said. "It wasn't a question. I remember that dress. You were there. I brought the folding chairs." He smiled, first time all day. Baptist church wouldn't let us keep them past Sunday. Had to load them back up myself at 6 the next morning. Edna turned the photograph over. On the back, in Walton's blocky hand, 3 words. 14. Trust me. She frowned at it. 14 what? She said. Silas was already reaching back into the box. Underneath where the photo had lain sat the second object, small, brass, cold in her palm when he set it there. A key, old style, the kind with a long shank and a flag-shaped head, stamped into the flag, worn but legible, 2 words and a number. Number 14. "That's a bank key," Silas said. "Safe deposit. I had one myself for 40 years. Same style, same bank probably." "Cutter's Gap Savings," Edna said. "It has to be. It's the only bank that was here in 61. Only bank that's ever been here," Silas said. "It's the same building, different paint." Edna closed her hand around the key. It was warmer now, from her own skin, but it still felt like something she'd been handed across 11 years, and a stroke, and a stack of sale papers nobody had asked her to sign. "He wrote 14 on the back of our wedding photo," she said, "and there's a 14 on this key, and they sold this building for $14,000. "Coincidence," Silas said, but he didn't sound like he believed it either. Walton didn't believe in coincidence. He believed in measurements. She looked at the key a long moment. He surveyed land before his hip went bad. "Did you know that?" "I knew he could read a plat map faster than any man in this county," Silas said. "Didn't know he trained for it. Neither did I. Not really. Not until just now." Something was moving into place behind her eyes. Slow, the way a lesson plan came together the night before a hard unit. He never talked about the deed on this property. Not once in 40 years of marriage. Maybe he didn't need to, Silas said. Maybe he just needed you to still be standing when it mattered. Outside, an engine revved once, idling rough, and a voice called out from the gravel lot, the man in the orange vest, checking his watch loud enough to be heard through the open schoolhouse door. "Ma'am, foreman's gonna be here inside 20 minutes. Edna stood, slid the key into her coat pocket where the sale envelope had ridden all afternoon, and looked at Silas Boone like she was back in front of a classroom, laying out the day's lesson. "I need a ride to the bank," she said, "before it closes." "It's 4:30, Silas said. "They close at 5 on Thursdays. Then we'd best not stand here admiring the view." He almost laughed, the sound catching somewhere between a cough and something older, and picked the tin box up off the sill, tucking it under one arm like it weighed nothing at all now that he knew what was riding inside it. "Your husband," he said, heading for the door, "was a stranger kind of careful man." "He was," Edna said, following him out past the coat pegs, past the initials carved soft into the doorframe, W.M. 1961, past the man in the orange vest who stepped aside without being asked this time, and in about 10 minutes, I intend to find out exactly what he was careful about. Silas's truck sat behind the flatbed, engine already ticking down from the drive out, and he had it running again before she'd gotten the door shut behind her, cane propped between her knees, tin box riding on the bench seat like a passenger of its own. "Cutter's Gap Savings," he said, pulling out onto Route 9. "Same teller's been there 30 years. Name's Ruth Pauley. She'll remember your husband's signature card if anybody does. You know her? Everybody knows Ruth. She cashed my retirement check every month for 11 years. He glanced at her, at the hospital band still looped pale around her wrist. "You want to take that off before we walk in there?" Edna looked down at it, plastic gone soft and yellowed from 3 weeks of hospital air. "No," she said. "Let them see exactly where I've been." The truck rattled over the Route 9 truss bridge, iron groaning under the tires the way it always had, Bellwood Creek running loud beneath them from a week of rain, and behind them, small in the side mirror, the schoolhouse sat waiting, cloakroom door still hanging open on its hinges, coat pegs bare, the crowbar left behind on the windowsill next to an envelope of sale papers Edna Marsh had still not bothered to open. Ruth Pauley was locking the front door when Silas knocked on the glass with one knuckle. She looked up, saw who was standing there, and turned the deadbolt back without a word. "Silas Boone," she said, "you're cutting it close. Ruth, this is Edna Marsh. I know who she is." Ruth held the door wide. "Taught my grandson his times tables. Come in out of that wind." The bank smelled like carpet cleaner and old paper, 4-teller windows, one open, a calendar on the wall still turned to June. Ruth Pauley was maybe 60, glasses on a beaded chain, and she looked at Edna's wrist before she looked at anything else. "That a hospital band?" "It is," Edna said. "You come straight from there?" "More or less." Ruth didn't ask more. She'd worked a bank counter 30 years. She'd learned not to ask more. Edna set the brass key on the counter. It made a small, bright sound against the marble. "I need to know what this opens," she said. Ruth picked it up, turned it under the desk lamp, read the stamped flag twice. "Number 14, she said. "That's one of ours. Old numbering, before we went digital. We don't cut keys like this anymore." She looked at Edna. "Whose name's on it?" "I don't know," Edna said. "My husband's, I'd guess. Walton Marsh." Ruth's face changed. "Not much, just enough." "Walton Marsh built the porch on my mother's house," she said. 1964. That sounds like him. "Let me pull the card." She disappeared into a back room, and Silas leaned his cane against the counter, tin box tucked under one arm still, and looked at Edna sideways. "You holding up? I've been better. You've been worse too, I expect." Edna almost smiled. "I have." Ruth came back with a signature card, yellowed, laminate peeling at one corner, and set it on the counter between them. "Box 14, she said. "Open March of 1962. Renewed every year since. Paid in full, right up till," she checked a line, "right up till the year he passed. After that, it just sat. Nobody paid the fee, but nobody closed it either. Bank doesn't do that without a death certificate and a claim." "Nobody ever claimed it?" Edna asked. "You're his wife," Ruth said. "You're the claim." She turned the card around, tapped a line at the bottom. "He listed you as sole beneficiary access. Same day he opened it. That's your signature line right there, if you want to sign it again." Edna looked at the line. Her own handwriting, 62 years younger, waited for her like a photograph. She signed it with her left hand. "That's not how you used to sign your name," Ruth said, gentle. "I had a stroke 3 weeks ago," Edna said. "I'm working with what I've got left." Ruth didn't flinch. "Then it's a good thing you've still got plenty." She led them back through a short hallway to a steel door, vault light buzzing overhead, boxes stacked floor to ceiling, behind bars like a filing cabinet built for a war. She found 14 near the bottom, fit the bank's master key alongside Edna's brass one, turned both at once, and slid the long metal drawer free. "I'll give you the room," Ruth said, and set it on a private table against the wall and stepped back through the vault door, pulling it most of the way shut behind her. Edna sat down across from the box like it might ask her a question. "Go on," Silas said. "It's not going to open itself." She lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded document, old paper gone the color of weak coffee, and beneath it a second envelope, sealed, her name written across the front in Walton's blocky hand. Edna Fay. She opened the folded document first, because her hands were shaking, and she needed something to read before she needed something to feel. It was a deed, handwritten in the formal looping copperplate of an older century, filed stamp faded but legible in the corner. Marsh Reverter Deed. Book 14, page 92, 1938. "Read it," Silas said. She read it slow, the way she used to read a hard word out loud for a class, sounding out the parts that mattered. "Should the building cease to serve as a public school," she read, "title shall revert to the grantor's heirs." She looked up. "Silas, It closed in 1988. I know it did, Silas said. I helped haul the last of the desks out myself. Then the county never should have owned it free and clear. Not once it stopped being a school. Her voice had gone quiet, careful, the voice she used for a fact she wasn't ready to trust yet, which means it never should have been the county's to sell. Silas took the paper from her, held it up to the vault light, turned it over. Book 14, he said. Page 92. That's not a coincidence either. No, Edna said. It's a filing number he memorized. That's what 14 meant. Not the key, not the box, the deed itself. She opened the second envelope. Inside, a single sheet. Walton's handwriting, less blocky than usual, like he'd written it slow on purpose. Edna Fay, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and somebody's finally come looking in that wall the way I always figured they would someday. I trained 2 years as a land surveyor before my hip went bad and the guard sent me home. Never told you much about it because it never came to anything. Not till I read this old deed in the courthouse basement in 1961, filed under Marsh, same as your maiden name, same family, near as I could tell. Your granddad gave that ground to the county on one condition, and the counties forgot it, same as they forget most things that don't cost them money today. I built that cloakroom with my own hands so nobody could pull this wall down without pulling down something they built to code first. I didn't tell you because you'd have worried, and because some things are better kept quiet till the day they're needed. I hope that day never comes. If it has, you'll know what to do. You always did. Love, Walton. Edna set the letter down on the table, flat, both hands on it, like it might slide off onto the floor if she let go. He knew, she said. He's known since before we were even married a year. Silas didn't say anything for a moment. He was looking at the deed, not the letter. Edna, he said, you know what this ground's worth if that reverter's good? I know what they sold it for. $14,000. He shook his head slow. I heard talk down at the feed store. Cumberland Ridge. Energy's been sniffing around every parcel on this side of the creek for 2 years, offering big money for gas rights. Word is they came at the county with an offer on the school tract before it ever went up for sale. County turned them down flat on account of the mold citation, on account of nobody wanted to touch a condemned building. How big a number, Silas? He looked at her steady. Big enough that if it's true, your children didn't sell a schoolhouse for $14,000. They sold a fortune for it. Edna folded the letter along its worn crease and slid it back into its envelope, careful, the way she used to fold a note before handing it to a student's parent. I need a lawyer, she said, and I need the county recorder's office before it closes too. Recorder's already closed, Silas said. It's Thursday. They close at 4. Then tomorrow morning, first thing. And the schoolhouse? Foreman's coming at 5 today. Edna stood, steadying herself on the table edge, cane hooked over one wrist, deed and letter both tucked now inside the manila envelope that had ridden all afternoon with sale papers she still hadn't read. They can bring their dozer, she said, but they are not touching that building until a judge tells me this deed is worthless. And I don't believe, Silas Boone, that any judge is going to tell me that. Ruth Pauley was waiting outside the vault when they came out, arms folded, glasses pushed up on her nose. Everything you needed? She asked. More than I needed, Edna said. Ruth, can you make me a certified copy of that signature card? Today, before you lock up. I can do that in 5 minutes. And can you tell me who handles real estate law in this county that isn't tangled up with Route 9 aggregate? Ruth thought about it exactly as long as it took to answer. Vivian Okafor, she said. Office over the pharmacy on Main. She did my sister's divorce and made the other side cry twice. She's sharp and she doesn't scare easy, and she's not from here, which in your situation might be exactly what you want. Why's that? Because everybody else in this county's known your son 30 years, Ruth said, and everybody in this county's real polite about not saying what they think of what he did. Edna took that in without flinching, the way she'd once taken in a bad report card and decided what to do about it before she ever said a word out loud. Call her, she said. Tell her Edna Marsh needs an hour tomorrow morning. Tell her to bring whatever paper stops a demolition crew. Ruth was already reaching for the phone behind the counter. Outside, the sky had gone the color of a school chalkboard at the end of a long day, and Silas's truck sat at the curb with its engine still running, tin box locked now inside the glove compartment, deed and letter riding in Edna's lap like something that might still change its mind about being real. "Where to?" Silas said, pulling out onto Main. "Home," Edna said. "I need to call my nurse and tell her I'm not dead in a ditch." "And after that?" Edna looked out the window at the storefront sliding by, the pharmacy, the hardware store where she'd bought a crowbar for $4 that afternoon, the whole small town that had no idea yet what was sitting folded in her lap. After that, she said, "I believe I owe my son a phone call, just so he knows exactly what kind of morning he's about to have." Edna's kitchen still smelled like the casserole Connie had dropped off the week before the stroke, untouched, gone soft in the refrigerator. She set the manila envelope on the table, deed and letter tucked inside it now, and dialed Dale's number from the wall phone because her cell phone was still at the hospital in a plastic bag with her shoes. He picked up on the second ring. "Mom?" His voice went careful. "You're supposed to be at Ridgeline. They called me 20 minutes ago saying you walked out." "I signed a form," Edna said. "It's called against medical advice. I'm allowed to do that. You had a stroke 3 weeks ago. I'm aware. I was there." Silas leaned against her counter, arms crossed, not saying anything, just listening the way he listened to an engine to hear what was wrong with it. "Where are you right now?" Dale said. "Home. Sitting at my own kitchen table." "Who drove you?" "Silas Boone." A pause. "Walton's old crew foreman?" "Mom, he's got to be 80. 81, Edna said. "And his eyesight's a good deal better than yours apparently because he saw something in that schoolhouse today that you and Connie walked right past." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a deed," Edna said, "filed in 1938, Book 14, page 92. It says that school reverts to the family the day it stops being a school." Dale laughed. Short, not a real laugh. "It stopped being a school in 1988, Mom. Nobody's cared about some old deed for 40 years. "Nobody looked," Edna said. "Your father looked. He found it in 1961. The line went quiet. "That's not," Dale started, "that's not a real thing." "If that were true, the title company would have flagged it when the county sold it." "Maybe they didn't check that far back," Edna said. "Maybe nobody wanted to. $14,000 doesn't buy much due diligence. Mom, listen to me." His voice had changed now, gone into the tone he used with clients, smooth, patient, the tone that made her want to hang up. "You've been through a lot. You're tired. You're not thinking straight. And some old man's got you chasing a piece of paper that probably doesn't mean anything anymore." "I signed a bank card an hour ago," Edna said. "Left hand. Ruth Polly witnessed it. My handwriting's different since the stroke, but my mind is not, Dale. Don't you tell me I'm not thinking straight. I have power of attorney." "Medical," Edna said. "Not financial, not property." "Go on and check the paper yourself. You're the one who had me sign it." Silas raised an eyebrow at that, and Edna almost smiled despite everything, because she'd read that form 3 times before her hand ever touched the pen. 38 years of grading student work had taught her to read anything before she signed it. "I sold that building in good faith," Dale said. "The county listed it. I didn't force anybody's hand. You didn't ask me either. You were in a coma for 4 days, Mom. What was I supposed to do, wait?" "You could have waited until I woke up," Edna said. "You waited plenty long enough to spend it." The silence on the line went long and ugly. "How do you know about that?" Dale said finally. "I don't need to know the particulars," Edna said. "I know you drive a truck now that wasn't in your driveway 3 weeks ago. I know Connie's been telling everybody at the Piggly Wiggly her visa's paid off. Small towns talk, Dale. You of all people ought to remember that." She heard him breathe out slow, the way he used to when he was a boy, caught somewhere he shouldn't have been. $6,000 down on the truck, he said, quiet now. Connie cleared $3,400 on her card. $2,000 went to Brittany's wedding deposit. The rest, his voice caught, just barely, the rest is sitting in an account for your co-pay, Mom. $2,100 and change. I was going to use it for you. Then you can use it to pay the county back, Edna said, because that sale is about to come undone, and I intend to see it does. You don't know that. I know a lawyer's going to tell me tomorrow morning, Edna said. Vivian Okafor, office over the pharmacy. I'd invite you, but I expect you'd rather hear it from a judge. Dale didn't say anything for a moment. Then, is that a threat? It's an appointment, Edna said. 9 o'clock. You're welcome to come explain to her why you signed papers on my property while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. That building was condemned, Mom. Black mold. A collapsing roof. Nobody in their right mind wanted it. Somebody did, Edna said. Cumberland Ridge Energy came to the county with an offer before you ever put it up for sale. County turned them down on account of the mold citation. Nobody told me that either. Silence, longer this time, the kind that told her he hadn't known. That's not, Dale said. That can't be right. Ask around the feed store, Edna said. Silas did. Took him 5 minutes. How much? Dale said, and his voice had gone very small. More than $14,000, Edna said. A great deal more. I'll know exact numbers soon enough. She heard him swallow. Mom, if this is real, if there's really money like that on the table, I need to be part of this. I'm still your son. You're still my son, Edna agreed. That's a fact I can't undo and wouldn't want to. But being my son and having a say in my property are two different things, and you proved that yourself 3 weeks ago. So what, you're cutting me out? I'm telling you what happens next, Edna said. Tomorrow I go to the recorder's office. Tomorrow I hire a lawyer. And Monday, when that flatbed comes back with a dozer instead of a fence crew, somebody is going to have to explain to a judge why they tried to knock down a building that never should have been sold in the first place. There's already a hearing set, Dale said, fast now, like he was reaching for solid ground. Route 9. Aggregate's attorney called this afternoon, right after the fence crew radioed in that you'd shown up asking about deeds. They want a competency review, Mom. On you. Monday morning, same courthouse. It's already filed. Edna set her free hand flat on the table, steadying something that didn't need steadying. A competency review, she repeated. It's not me, Dale said. I mean, it's not just me. Connie signed onto it too. It's to protect the sale. If you're found, he stopped. Found unfit, Edna said. They used a nicer word than that. There isn't a nicer word than that, Dale. Her voice didn't rise. It never had. Not in 38 years of a classroom, not now. Same day as my recorder's appointment. That's not a coincidence either, is it? I didn't set the date. No, Edna said, but you signed onto the petition. Monday it is then. Bring whatever paper you've got. I'll bring mine. She hung the phone back on its cradle before he could answer, and stood there a moment with her hand still resting on it, cane hooked over her wrist. Silas watching her from across the kitchen with an expression she couldn't quite read. Competency hearing, he said. Same day. Same day, Edna said. That's no accident, no. She pulled a chair out and sat, slower than she wanted to, the stroke still living in her left side, no matter how straight she stood for her son on the phone. That's a man trying to get to the courthouse first. You want me to call Ruth back? See if she can move up that appointment with the lawyer? No, Edna said. I want you to help me write down everything that happened today, while it's still fresh. Times, names, what Ruth said, what the deed said. If somebody's going to stand up Monday and say, I don't know my own mind, I intend to hand the judge more paper than they've ever seen in their life. Silas pulled out the chair across from her and sat down heavy, tin box still riding under one arm like it had grown there. You know, he said, your husband once told me a thing, working on that cloakroom wall. I asked him why he was building it so sturdy for a coat closet. He said, some walls just hold coats. Some walls hold a promise, worth building different. Edna looked at him a long moment, throat tight, and reached for a legal pad from the drawer by the phone. The same drawer where she used to keep report cards before the county switched to computers. Get me a pen, Silas, she said. We've got a competency hearing to get ready for, and exactly 1 weekend to do it in. Outside, the wind picked up over Bellwood Creek, rattling the porch light Walton had wired himself 30 years before, still burning steady, nobody ever having thought to replace the bulb. Friday morning came in gray and low, fog still sitting on Bellwood Creek when Silas pulled his truck up outside the pharmacy on Main. Edna had slept maybe 3 hours. She didn't feel it. Adrenaline did what sleep couldn't. The stairs up to Vivian Okafor's office were steep, and Edna took them one at a time, cane first, then her good leg, then the other. Silas a step behind with his hand hovering near her elbow without ever quite touching it. I can still turn around, Edna said, halfway up. You won't, though. No, she said. I won't. Vivian Okafor's office smelled like fresh paper and burnt coffee. She was maybe 40, sharp-jawed, reading glasses pushed into short, curly hair, a legal pad already covered in handwriting before Edna even sat down. "Ruth called me last night," Vivian said. "Told me to clear my morning. She doesn't do that for just anybody. She said you made her sister's ex cry twice." "Twice," Vivian agreed. "I'm proud of the second time." She slid the legal pad aside and held her hand out. "Let me see the deed, Mrs. Marsh." Edna passed her the envelope. Vivian read it slow, lips moving slightly, the way a person reads something they intend to remember word for word. "Book 14, page 92, she murmured. "Reverter clause, 1938, she looked up. "You understand what this says?" "I understand it says, the school comes back to my family the day it stops being a school." "It says exactly that." Vivian tapped the page. "Should the building cease to serve as a public school, title shall revert to the grantor's heirs." That's about as plain as language gets. "Somebody wrote this deed wanting it to be found someday. My husband wanted it found," Edna said. "He just didn't figure it'd take 60-some years." Vivian set the deed down and folded her hands. "Here's where it gets complicated. This clause is only good if it was never superseded, if the county replatted that land, if there was a later deed that stripped the condition out. This is worth the paper it's printed on. Nothing more. So we check." "So we check," Vivian said. "Today, before anybody at that courthouse has a reason to make it hard to find." Silas cleared his throat from the chair by the door. "There's more," he said. "Tell her about the note." Vivian's eyebrows went up. Edna slid the second envelope across the desk, Walton's letter still folded along its worn crease. Vivian read it twice. When she looked up the second time, her face had changed. "He trained as a surveyor," she said. 2 years, Edna said, "before his hip went bad. And he found this deed in 1961, in the courthouse basement." Vivian sat back. "Mrs. Marsh, do you understand what that means? He didn't stumble onto this. He went looking. He knew the family history, he knew what to search for, and he built a wall around the evidence so nobody could tear it down without exposing it first." "He built cabinets," Edna said. "That's all anybody around here ever thought he was doing." "He built a vault," Vivian said, "just not the kind with a lock." She stood, walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a blank form, started writing before she'd even sat back down. "I'm filing an emergency motion this afternoon. Temporary restraining order stops any demolition on that parcel until the reverter question is settled by a judge. I'll also need certified copies of everything, the deed, the letter, that signature card Ruth pulled for you." "There's a hearing Monday," Edna said. "My son filed for a competency review. Same courthouse. Same day I'm supposed to file all this." Vivian's pen stopped moving. "Say that again." "Dale and Connie," Edna said. "My children. They filed a petition asking a judge to find me unfit. Monday morning. That's not a coincidence." "No," Edna said. "It's a race." Vivian set the pen down slow and looked at her, really looked, the way a person looks at somebody they're about to go to battle for. "Then, we don't file this afternoon," she said. "We file within the hour. And Mrs. Marsh, I need you to understand something. If they're smart, and your son sounds smart, they're going to argue that a woman recovering from a stroke, wandering into a condemned building with a crowbar, chasing an old deed nobody's looked at in decades, that's Exhibit 1 for their competency claim, not exhibit against it." Edna's jaw set. "Then we'd best make sure the deed's real before Monday." "Yes," Vivian said, "we'd best." The recorder's office was 3 blocks over, a squat brick building with a flag out front hanging still in the fog. Ruth Pauley had called ahead. The clerk, a young man named Terry with a lanyard full of keys, had a banker's box already pulled and waiting on the counter. "Ruth said you'd be needing the full chain on that parcel," Terry said. "Marsh tract, off Route 9. "That's right," Vivian said. Terry laid the documents out in order, oldest to newest. 1938, deed of gift, condition attached. A 1952 easement for a water line, nothing about the school itself. A 1988 letter from the County Board of Education declaring the building surplus, no deed transfer attached to it, just a letter. Then nothing. Nothing at all until this year's sale to Route 9 aggregate. Vivian went through it twice, finger tracing each entry, murmuring dates under her breath. Then she stopped. "There it is," she said. "Or rather, there it isn't." "Isn't what?" Edna said. "A superseding deed. There should be one if the county ever tried to clear that reverter clause. There isn't one. Nobody in 50 years ever tried to fix this. They just forgot it was broken." She looked up at Terry. "This deed was never modified?" "Not that's recorded," Terry said. "Book 14's original condition stands as filed. Only thing that changed hands was the surplus declaration in '88, and that's a school board letter, not a deed. Doesn't touch title. So the condition's still good," Edna said. "The condition," Vivian said, "is still very, very good." Terry was quiet a second, looking between them, and then he said the thing almost like he couldn't help himself. "You know, Cumberland Ridge came sniffing around this office back in the spring. Asked for a full title search on that exact parcel before the county ever put it up for sale." "We heard," Silas said. "They didn't just ask," Terry said. "They had an appraiser out here, private fellow, ran comps on the mineral rights alone. I saw the file cross this counter." He lowered his voice like the walls might repeat it. 1.3 million. Signing bonus. That's before a dime of royalty ever gets paid. The number sat in the room a moment, heavy, nobody moving to pick it up. 1.3 million, Edna repeated, flat, the way she used to repeat a spelling word back to a nervous student so it didn't feel so big in their mouth. "That's what I saw," Terry said. "I'm not supposed to say numbers like that out loud, but you're standing here with the original deed in your hand, and that man sold your school for $14,000, so I figure you're owed the number." Vivian was already gathering the copies, sliding them into a folder, hands moving fast now. "Mrs. Marsh," she said, "we need to get back to my office. I have a motion to finish, and now I know exactly how big a fire I'm trying to put out before Monday." Outside, the fog had started to burn off the creek, and the courthouse flag hung a little looser in a wind picking up from the west. Edna stood on the steps a moment, cane planted, looking down Main Street toward the pharmacy, toward the school beyond it she couldn't see from here, but knew was standing exactly where Walton had left it. He knew, she said, mostly to herself. He didn't just protect a coat closet, he protected all of it. Silas came up beside her, tin box long gone now from under his arm, safe in Vivian's file room with everything else. "Whatever this town does to that school," he said, quiet, "that cloakroom isn't going anywhere. That's what he told you." "Word for word, I'd guess." "Word for word," Edna said. "He wasn't talking about a coat closet, Edna." "Never was." She nodded, throat tight, and started down the steps toward the truck. Cane first, then her good leg, then the other, a woman who had just found out the whole town had been standing on top of a fortune for 60 years and calling it a condemned building. "Monday," she said, once she was in the truck seat and Silas had come around to the driver's side. "Whatever they've got planned, Silas, it isn't going to be enough." "No," he said, starting the engine. "I don't believe it is." Vivian didn't sit back down when they got to her office. She spread the copies across her desk, deed and letter and title chain side by side, and reached for the phone before her coat was even off. "Judge Talbot hears emergency motions on Fridays till noon," she said. "We've got 40 minutes. She dialed, waited, then straightened like she'd been handed good news. "Your Honor, Vivian Okafor. I've got a temporary restraining order for you to sign today, not Monday." A pause. "Marsh tract. Off Route 9. There's a demolition crew scheduled and a reverter clause nobody's litigated." Another pause. Longer. "Yes, Your Honor. I'll have it filed within the hour." She hung up and looked at Edna. "He'll sign it. That buys us the weekend. No dozer touches that building till a judge rules on the deed." "And Monday?" Edna said. "Monday we walk into 2 hearings instead of 1, Vivian said. "Theirs on your competency, mine on the reverter. I'd rather go in with a signed order in my pocket than empty-handed." Silas leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "You think Talbot signs it same day for anybody who walks in?" "No," Vivian said. "I think he signs it for a woman with a 1938 deed and a school board that never fixed their own paperwork. That's not favoritism, that's just the law doing its job for once." She filled in the caption by hand, fast, block letters. Edna watched her write Marsh versus Route 9 Aggregate, LLC, across the top and felt something settle in her chest she hadn't expected. Not triumph, just weight, finally landing where it belonged. Filing fees $137, Vivian said, not looking up. I'll front it. You can pay me back out of the $14,000 once we get it returned. You'll get every penny, Edna said. I know I will, Vivian said. That's why I'm fronting it. By 4 o'clock, the order was signed, stamped, and in the hands of a sheriff's deputy who drove it out to the Route 9 aggregate office himself. By 5, it was nailed to the schoolhouse gate next to the condemned notice. 2 pieces of paper now instead of 1, arguing with each other in the wind. Dale called at 6. Edna let it ring 4 times before she picked it up. You had a judge sign a restraining order, Dale said. No hello. Against a company that's got a contract. I had a judge stop a demolition, Edna said, on a building whose deed says it was never yours to sell. You went behind my back. You went behind mine first, Edna said, from a hospital bed, if I recall. He didn't answer that. She heard Connie's voice in the background, low and fast, and then the phone changed hands with a clatter. Mama, this has gone far enough, Connie said. You're scaring people. Vivian Okafor's office called the title company today asking about mineral rights. Mineral rights, Mama, what is that about? Ask your brother, Edna said. He signed the paperwork. I expect he read it. Don't do this to us, Connie said, and her voice cracked on the word us. We made a mistake. We know we made a mistake. But you're talking about lawsuits and judges like we're criminals. I'm not talking like anything, Edna said. I'm doing what the law lets me do. There's a difference, Connie, and I taught that difference to children for 38 years. I think you'd have picked some of it up. Silence on the line, thin and cold. We're coming out there tomorrow, Connie said finally. Both of us. We need to talk face to face. Come on then, Edna said. Saturday's as good a day as any. They came at 11, Dale's new truck rolling up the gravel drive with a shine still on it that hadn't dulled yet. Connie got out first, arms already crossed, and Dale came around slower, like a man walking into a room he already knew was going badly. Edna met them on the porch, cane planted, Silas a few steps behind her, pretending to fix a hinge that didn't need fixing. You look better, Dale said. Color's back. I feel fine, Edna said. Say what you came to say. Connie climbed the steps first. We talked to a man from the title company. He let it slip. Cumberland Ridge Energy's offer. Mama, is it true? Is it really over $1 million? 1.3, Edna said. Signing bonus alone. Royalties on top, once the gas starts moving. Connie's hand went to her mouth. Dale went very still, the way he used to when he'd broken something as a boy and was doing the math on how bad the punishment would be. And you knew, Dale said. You knew, and you let us sign that sale. I didn't know, Edna said. Not till Wednesday. Same as you should have known before you signed anything, if you'd bothered to ask the county what they'd been offered before you ever listed it. We asked a real estate agent, Dale said. Not you. Me. I am one. Then that's a professional failure to add to the personal one, Edna said, and her voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. You didn't check because you didn't want to find a reason to slow down. $14,000 looked like plenty when you were standing over your mother's hospital bed deciding what to do with her life's work. Connie sat down hard on the porch step, face in her hands. We can't pay it back, she said, muffled. Not all of it. Brittany's dress is already bought. The deposit's non-refundable. Then you'll owe it, Edna said. That's what a reverter means, Connie. The sale never should have happened. Every dollar that came out of it goes back where it started. You'd really do that to us, Dale said. Take it all back. Leave us holding a truck payment and a wedding bill we can't cover. I'm not taking anything, Edna said. The law's taking it. I'm just the one who found the deed. Dale looked past her at the house, at the porch light still burning from 30 years back, at Silas standing there with a screwdriver he wasn't using. There's a hearing Monday, he said. You know that's still happening. Competency review's still on the docket. Judge Talbot signing your order doesn't cancel ours. I know it, Edna said. I'll be there. 9 o'clock, same as you. You understand what it'll look like, Dale said, quieter now, almost pleading. A woman who had a stroke 3 weeks ago, breaking into a condemned building with a crowbar, chasing a deed from 1938. A judge could look at that and see exactly what our petition says he'll see. He could, Edna said. Or he could look at the deed itself and see exactly what it says, plain as anything, filed 60 years before either of you were born. I'll take my chances on which one holds up better in a courtroom. Dale's jaw worked. He looked at Connie, who hadn't lifted her face from her hands, and then back at his mother. There's something else, he said. Route 9 Aggregate's attorney called this morning. Before we even left the house, said if the restraining order holds through Monday, they're pulling their equipment off the demolition schedule altogether. But if it gets thrown out, even for a few hours, they've got a crew standing by to move Sunday night instead of waiting for Monday morning. Edna went still. Sunday night, she said. Before the hearing, Dale said. Before any judge rules on your deed. Their lawyer says a restraining order isn't permanent, it's temporary, and temporary orders lapse if nobody's there to renew them fast enough. He thinks he's got a window. Silas set the screwdriver down on the porch rail, slow, and looked at Edna. That's not a legal argument, he said. That's a man trying to beat a piece of paper by moving fast enough to knock the building down before anybody can stop him twice. That's exactly what it is, Edna said, and something in her chest had gone hard and clear, the way it used to on the first day of school when a new class was sizing her up to see how far they could push. Dale, look at me. He did, reluctant. Did you know about this Sunday crew before you drove out here, she said, or did you find out same time I did? He hesitated half a second too long. I knew, he said. Their lawyer told me last night. And you came out here today to talk me out of the hearing, Edna said, knowing full well there might not be a schoolhouse left standing by Monday morning. I came out here because you're my mother, Dale said, voice cracking now for real. I don't want to lose you and the money both. You should have thought of that 3 weeks ago, Edna said, before you decided a signature from an unconscious woman was good enough to build a truck payment on. Connie finally raised her head, eyes red. Mama, what are you going to do? Edna turned to Silas. Call Vivian, she said. Tell her Route 9 Aggregate means to move that crew tonight, not Monday. Tell her we need somebody watching that gate before dark, and we need it in writing to the judge before this evening's out. Silas was already moving down the porch steps toward his truck. Dale caught his mother's sleeve as she turned to follow. Mom, if they knock it down tonight, there's nothing left to revert. No building, no clause, no case. You understand that? I understand it better than you do, Edna said, pulling her arm free, gentle but final. That's why I'm not standing here talking to you anymore. I'm going to that gate. She went down the steps behind Silas, cane finding the gravel, one careful step at a time. Hospital band long gone from her wrist, but the memory of it riding under her sleeve just the same, and behind her she heard Connie start to cry in earnest, and Dale say her name once, low, like a man watching something leave that he couldn't call back. The gate came up out of the dusk before the truck did, headlights catching the chain link first, then the condemned notice, then the court order stapled beside it, both papers snapping in the wind off the creek. Silas pulled the truck across the gravel entrance sideways, not parked, blocking. That's not legal parking, Edna said. No, Silas said, it isn't. She got out slow, cane first, boots crunching gravel still damp from the fog that morning. Behind her, headlights swung wide off Route 9 and settled on the schoolhouse gate. A flatbed, then a second truck behind it, yellow light bar dark on top, not running yet. Vivian's car came up right behind them, tires spitting stone. Sheriff's on his way, Vivian said, climbing out with a folder already in hand. I called the second Silas called me. They're early, Edna said. They're breaking a court order, Vivian said. Early's the least of it. A man got out of the lead truck, work jacket, hard hat under his arm instead of on his head. Edna didn't know him. Dale did. He was climbing out of his own truck now, parked crooked behind the flatbed, Connie right behind him, both of them looking like they'd been arguing the whole drive out. Foreman, Dale said, low, to nobody and everybody. Name's Roy Combs, the man said, walking up. I got a work order says clear this lot tonight. You've got a work order, Vivian said, that a judge already voided this afternoon. There's a restraining order nailed right there next to the one you're standing under. Roy Combs looked at the paper, read it slow, lips moving a little. My dispatch didn't say nothing about that. Your dispatch is wrong, Vivian said. Call your office. Ask for the fax that came through at 4:15. He didn't move for his phone. He looked past her instead, at the schoolhouse, dark now, windows black, roofline sagging at one corner, the way it had sagged for 30 years. I got a bonus rides on tonight, Roy said. Company said move before Monday, no matter what papers nailed to a gate. Company told you to break a judge's order, Vivian said. Say that again, slower, so I can write it down. Roy didn't say it again. Dale stepped up beside him. Mama, this doesn't have to turn into a standoff. You're the one standing here at 7 at night with a demolition crew, Edna said. I didn't start this. I came to stop it, Dale said. Not start it. You came because Connie called you crying, Edna said, and you were already scared of what a judge might say Monday if this building's still standing. Connie's chin came up. That's not fair. Fair's not the word I'm after tonight, Edna said. Legal is. Headlights swung in off the road again, red and blue this time, no siren, just the bar turning slow over the dark water of the creek. A cruiser eased to a stop behind Roy's truck. Deputy got out unhurried, flashlight still clipped to his belt. Evening, he said. Got a call about equipment moving on a restrained property. That's this lot, Vivian said, handing him the order before he even asked. Signed by Judge Talbot at 4 this afternoon. The deputy read it under his flashlight, slow the same way Roy had. This look legitimate to you, Roy? The deputy said. Looks like a piece of paper, Roy said. It's a piece of paper with a judge's signature on it, the deputy said. That means if your dozer touches that building tonight, I'm not writing you a warning. I'm writing an arrest report. Roy's jaw worked. He looked back at his own truck, engine still running, a second man behind the wheel watching all of this through the windshield like a man watching weather roll in. I got a bonus, Roy said again, quieter now, like the number was the only argument he had left. Bonus won't cover bail, the deputy said. Silence sat over the gravel a second, broken only by the creek running under the bridge and both trucks idling low. Call your office, Vivian said again, gentler now that the deputy was standing there. Tell them the deputy's here. Tell them he's read the order. Tell them if that dozer moves tonight, Route 9 aggregate's about to be in contempt of court on top of everything else. Roy pulled his phone out, walked off a few steps toward the creek rail, voice low, one hand pressed to his other ear against the wind. Edna stood where she was, cane planted, watching the schoolhouse behind the fence. Its windows held no light of their own, but the deputy's flashlight caught the edge of the porch a second, then the door, then the boarded window of the cloakroom, and for that second, the whole building looked less like a condemned thing and more like something waiting. You didn't have to come out here, Dale said to her, quieter now, the fight gone thin in his voice. You could have stayed home. Let Vivian handle it. I built 38 years in that building, Edna said. I wasn't going to let it come down while I sat on a porch. It's just wood and mold, Mama, Connie said, though there wasn't much heat left in it now, more like a habit she couldn't put down. It was never just wood and mold, Edna said. Your father built that cloakroom with his own hands. I taught every child in this county their letters inside those walls. You want to call that nothing? You go on. But you'll call it nothing standing right next to a judge's order that says otherwise. Roy came back from the creek rail, phone still in his hand, face different now, less certain. Dispatch says stand down, he said. Said pull equipment back to the yard. Said they'll deal with the legal and Monday. Smart of them, Vivian said. Don't feel smart, Roy said. Feels like I drove 40 minutes for nothing. You drove 40 minutes to almost get arrested, the deputy said. I'd call standing down the smartest thing that's happened out here all night. Roy waved the second driver forward, and the flatbed's engine dropped low, then quiet, then dead. The lot went still except for the creek and the wind, and somewhere behind the fence a loose shutter ticking against the schoolhouse wall like it always had, cold weather or not. Dale watched the trucks start backing out, one at a time, gravel popping under their tires. That's it? He said, to nobody. They just leave? For tonight, Vivian said. Monday's a different fight. Monday they'll have a lawyer instead of a foreman, and Judge Talbot's going to have to decide whether that reverter clause holds up in open court, with your competency petition sitting on the very same docket. And if it doesn't hold, Connie said, then the sale stands, Vivian said, and Cumberland Ridge Energy's check goes to Route 9 aggregate instead of to your mother. And you two spend the next year explaining to a court why you cashed a hospital bed signature before anybody told you what it was worth. Nobody answered that. The deputy walked back to his cruiser, radio crackling low, and gave Edna a nod on his way past like a man tipping a hat he wasn't wearing. "Ma'am," he said, "Judge Talbot doesn't sign many same-day orders. You must have brought him something solid." "A deed," Edna said, "older than most everybody standing on this gravel tonight." He almost smiled at that, climbed in, and pulled out slow taillights fading down toward the bridge. Dale stood a long moment by his own truck, keys in his hand, not turning them yet. "Monday," he said finally. "Monday," Edna said. "You understand what happens if the judge sides with us," he said. "Sides with Connie and me on competency. It doesn't matter what deed you found. A guardian could still undo all of it." "I understand it fine," Edna said. "I've understood every part of this since the day I asked a nurse for a crowbar instead of a get-well card." Connie's eyes went wet again, quick, and she looked away toward the creek so nobody would watch it happen. "We didn't want it to come to a courtroom, Mama," she said. "No," Edna said. "You wanted it to come to a closing table, quiet, before I ever woke up enough to ask a question. That's not the same as not wanting a courtroom. That's wanting to skip the part where somebody has to answer for it." She turned from them then, toward the fence, toward the dark shape of the school beyond it, and let Silas take her elbow on the uneven gravel without arguing about needing the help. 2 days, Silas said, once the truck doors had shut on both sides and the lot had gone quiet, except for the creek. "Judge hears it Monday morning. You ready?" "I've been ready since I found that key," Edna said. "Questions whether the rest of this town's ready to hear what's inside the box that came with it." Silas looked back once at the schoolhouse before he started the engine, at the boarded windows and the sagging porch roof, and the 2 notices nailed side by side on the gate, arguing with each other in the same wind that had rattled that loose shutter for 30 years running. "They will be," he said, "whether they're ready or not." Vivian called at 7 the next morning before Edna had her coffee poured. "Dale's lawyer filed something overnight," she said. "An emergency motion. Temporary guardianship, effective immediately, not Monday." Edna set the phone down on the counter and put it on speaker. Silas was at her kitchen table, going through the deed papers again, but he stopped moving his hands. "On what grounds?" Edna said. "Says you left a hospital against medical advice," Vivian said. "Says you stood in a demolition zone Saturday night arguing with a work crew. Calls it a pattern of impaired judgment. Asks the judge to appoint Dale as temporary guardian before Monday, so he can, quote, prevent further risk to her person and her assets." "My person was standing on flat gravel," Edna said. "My assets were the only thing anybody was fighting over." "I know it," Vivian said, "but a judge reading it cold, without context, could see an old woman with a stroke history walking into a construction site at night. That's the picture Dale's painting." Silas set the papers down. "He's using the very thing that saved the building against her." "That's exactly what he's doing," Vivian said. "It's a good move on his part. I won't pretend it isn't." Edna poured her coffee anyway, hand steady, and carried the cup to the table. "When's the judge look at it?" "Could be today," Vivian said. "Emergency motions get read fast. If he signs it before Monday, Dale's guardian by lunch, and guardians can settle lawsuits their wards would rather fight. Meaning he could just let the sale stand," Silas said. "Sign away the reverter claim himself." "Meaning exactly that," Vivian said. Edna looked at the deed on the table. The old ink gone brown. Book 14, page 92, 60 years of dust wiped off it now. "Then we need something in front of that judge today that says, 'I'm not a confused old woman wandering a job site.' Something that says, 'I know precisely what I'm doing and precisely what it's worth.'" "What did you have in mind?" Vivian said. "Cumberland Ridge Energy," Edna said. "Get their man on the phone. The one who's been asking Route 9 aggregate for lease rights on that tract for 2 years running." Silas's eyebrows went up. Vivian went quiet a second on the line. "You want to bring an oil and gas company into a guardianship hearing," she said. "I want a professional man to state on paper what that tract is worth," Edna said. "One number. Big enough that no judge reads it and pictures a doddering woman who doesn't know her own name." Vivian let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I'll call him within the hour." The Cumberland Ridge man's name was Foster Gaines, and he drove out from Charleston himself instead of sending it by phone, which told Edna something before he'd said a word. He was maybe 50, tie loosened, a leather folder under one arm, and he stood on Edna's porch looking at the schoolhouse a half-mile off like a man pricing a horse. "Mrs. Marsh," he said, "I understand there's some question about title." "There was," Edna said. "There won't be much longer. I've got people asking me daily when we can move on that lease," Gaines said. "I'd rather ask you straight than dance around it. What's your timeline?" "Monday," Edna said. "Judge Talbot hears the reverter claim and my children's guardianship petition both. Same docket." Gaines opened his folder on the porch rail. "Then you should know what's sitting on the table. So whatever gets decided Monday, it gets decided with the real numbers in front of it." He turned the folder toward her. Vivian leaned in to read it too. $1.3 million, Gaines said, "signing bonus alone. That's before royalties on anything we bring up out of that ground. Standing offer. Good through the end of the month, contingent on clear title." Silas whistled low. Edna didn't move much, just nodded once, like a woman confirming a number she'd already guessed close to. $14,000, she said. "That's what my children sold that tract for while I lay in a hospital bed." Gaines's face didn't change much, but something behind his eyes did. $14,000, he repeated, "for a tract we've offered $1.3 million on." "They didn't know," Edna said. "Route 9. Aggregate didn't tell them what was underneath, just told them the building on top was worthless." "Route 9. Aggregate knew," Gaines said. "Flat. We approached them directly 8 months ago. They turned us down flat. Said they meant to hold the mineral rights for their own use once they had the surface cleared." Vivian's pen stopped on her notepad. "Say that again." "Route 9. Aggregate has known about our offer since November," Gaines said. "That's on record in our own files. Emails, a phone log. They didn't buy that schoolhouse tract for $14,000 because they wanted gravel out of it. They bought it because they knew exactly what sat underneath, and they figured a family selling out of a hospital room wouldn't ask the right questions." The porch went quiet enough that Edna heard the creek down past the tree line, running low the way it did most Julys. "Would you say that in a courtroom?" Edna said. "I'll put it in writing today," Gaines said. "Sworn if your lawyer wants it sworn. My company's got no interest in watching a bad title cloud a good lease. We'd rather deal with one clear owner than 3 fighting over scraps." Vivian was already writing. "That changes the guardianship argument some," she said. "It's a lot harder to call Mrs. Marsh confused when the value gap she's chasing turns out to be exactly what she said it was, backed by an outside company's own paper trail." "Harder for Dale, too," Silas said. "If Route 9 knew what was under that ground, that's not 2 children making an honest mistake. That's 2 children getting used by a company that saw them coming." Edna looked at Gaines. "Would Route 9's own man testify to that?" "Under oath." "Doubt it," Gaines said. "But my files will, and files don't get to plead the fifth." Vivian closed her notepad. "I'll have this typed up and filed as an exhibit before end of day. If the judge is reading an emergency guardianship motion this afternoon, he's going to have Foster Gaines's letter sitting right next to it." Gaines shook Edna's hand before he left, careful with it, the way people got careful with hers since the stroke, though her grip was fine and always had been. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Marsh," he said, "I've been in this business 11 years. Companies work this angle more than folks know. Somebody in the hospital, somebody grieving, somebody desperate, and a lowball offer shows up right on time. Most families never find out how bad they got taken. You found out." "I had help," Edna said, and looked at Silas. Gaines drove off down the gravel toward Route 9, dust rising thin behind his car, and Vivian gathered her folder to follow him into town. "One more thing," Vivian said, pausing at the porch steps. "Dale's motion, if it gets denied today, that doesn't kill the guardianship petition. Just knocks out the emergency part. Monday's hearing still covers both. He'll walk in with his lawyer arguing competency, same as planned." "Let him," Edna said. "He walks in with a story about a confused old woman. I walk in with a letter from an oil company confirming I know the value of my own land down to the dollar, and a deed his own lawyer can't argue around. And the guardianship claim itself," Vivian said. "What do you want me to ask the judge if it comes to that? Dismissal outright or something softer?" Edna thought about that a moment, coffee gone cold in her hand. "Ask him to dismiss it," she said. "But I want to be the one standing in that courtroom when he does. Not you reading it off for me. Me?" Vivian nodded slow. 9 o'clock Monday then. Both matters. Same docket, same judge, same gravel lot after, Silas said, one way or the other. Edna watched Vivian's car follow Gaines's dust down toward the bridge and turned back to the schoolhouse standing at the edge of her sight, boarded windows catching the morning sun flat and gray. 2 days left before a judge decided whether that building and the ground under it belonged to her or to the two people who'd signed her name to give it away. She went back inside and got the manila envelope down off the shelf where she'd set it, the sale papers still folded inside it, Dale's signature and Connie's right where they'd left them. She didn't open it, she just set it by the door, ready the way she used to lay out a lesson plan the night before school, everything squared and waiting for morning. Vivian called back a little after 4 that afternoon, and this time her voice had color in it, high and quick. Judge denied the emergency motion, she said. Read Gaines's letter first, then Dale's petition. Took him 11 minutes. 11 minutes, Edna said. He wrote insufficient evidence of impaired judgment right on the order. Said a woman who can price her own mineral rights to the dollar isn't the confused party he's picturing. Silas laughed once, short and hard, from the kitchen table. So Monday still stands, Edna said. Both matters, Vivian said. 9 o'clock. Courtroom 2. Edna hung up and sat a minute with her hand flat on the counter, feeling the cool of it. Silas watched her. You don't look like a woman who just won anything, he said. I don't feel like I've won anything, Edna said. I feel like I've bought 2 more days to get hit again. She was right about that. Dale showed up at her porch before supper, no truck this time, just his own car, parked crooked in the yard like he hadn't cared where it landed. You had Cumberland Ridge send a man to my mother's porch, he said before he was even up the steps. You turned this into an oil deal. It was always an oil deal, Edna said. You just didn't know it when you signed it away. $14,000, Dale said. That's what Route 9 offered. That's what we took. Nobody told us different. Route 9 knew different, Edna said. 8 months before you ever signed a paper. Gaines has the emails. Dale's jaw tightened. Doesn't matter what Route 9 knew. Matters what the deed says. And I've got a lawyer who thinks that deed of yours won't hold up 5 minutes in front of a judge. On what grounds? Silas said, stepping onto the porch behind Edna. Says a deed that old, no witnesses left living, initials carved in a door frame instead of notarized proper. That's the kind of thing gets challenged as fabricated. Says it wouldn't be the first time somebody found convenient paperwork right when they needed it. Edna felt something go cold and still in her, the kind of stillness she used to get right before she corrected a child in front of the whole class. You're calling your father's handwriting fabricated, she said. I'm calling it questionable, Dale said. That's all a lawyer needs. Questionable. Get off my porch, Dale, Edna said, quiet. He went. She watched his car swing wide out of the yard, gravel spitting under the tires, faster than it needed to go. Silas didn't say anything for a while. Then he did. He's talking about the initials, he said. WM 1961, cut into the frame inside that cloakroom door. I know what he's talking about, Edna said. I was there when Walton cut them, Silas said. Same afternoon we hung the last cabinet. He had a jackknife, not much bigger than his thumb. Said a man ought to sign his own work, same as anybody signs a check. Would you say that in a courtroom, Edna said. I'd say it standing on my head if the judge asked me to, Silas said. Questions whether anybody thinks an old man's memory beats a lawyer's suspicion. Judge Talbot will, Edna said, if we give him something besides memory to stand it on. She called Vivian that night. Vivian was quiet a moment on the line, thinking it through. There's a way, she said finally. County Recorder's Office keeps microfilm going back before the courthouse fire in '52. If your reverter deed shows up on that film, filed in 1938 same as the paper copy, that's not something anybody planted last month. That's public record, dated, untouchable. Can you get it by Monday? Edna said. I can try tonight, Vivian said. Clerk owes me a favor from the Pruitt estate mess 2 years back. I'll call her at home if I have to. She did call her at home, and by 9 that night she was back on Edna's line, out of breath like she'd been running instead of driving. It's there, she said. Book 14, page 92, microfilm reel 6, dated same as your paper copy, notarized by a county clerk named Odell Ferris, deceased 1979. It's real, Edna. It's been sitting in that courthouse basement since before your husband was born. Print it, Edna said. Bring it Monday. Already printing, Vivian said. And I'm having the recorder's office certify it, stamp and all, so nobody's lawyer gets to stand up and call it convenient. Edna set the phone down and looked across the kitchen at the envelope by the door, the one holding Dale's signature and Connie's, waiting the way it had waited 2 days already. Monday came in gray and close, clouds sitting low over the ridge the way they did before rain that never quite fell. Edna wore her good navy dress, the one she used to wear for school board meetings, and pinned her hair back the way she'd worn it 30 years running in front of a classroom. The courthouse in Cutter's Gap was a squat brick building 3 blocks off Route 9, older than most everything around it except the schoolhouse itself. Courtroom 2 smelled like floor wax and old radiators, even in July, and the benches were half full by the time Edna came through the door on Silas's arm, cane in her free hand. Dale sat up front with a lawyer she didn't recognize, young, sharp-suited, a leather bag at his feet stuffed thick with paper. Connie sat beside them, twisting a tissue in her lap already, though nothing had been said yet worth crying over. Vivian was at the other table, folder open, Foster Gaines's letter clipped on top where the judge would see it first. Foster Gaines himself sat in the gallery, tie straight, like a man who'd come to watch a deal he cared about get settled cleanly. Silas walked Edna to her seat and then took his own, 1 row back, close enough to reach if she needed him. "All rise," the bailiff said, and the room did, chairs scraping, and Judge Talbot came in through the side door in his robe, a heavy-set man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead like a second pair of eyes. "Be seated," he said. "We've got 2 matters on this docket, both concerning the same parties, same tract of land. I've read the filings. I'll hear argument, but I'll tell you now, I don't intend to be here past noon." Dale's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, Nathaniel Pruitt, for petitioners Dale Marsh and Connie Marsh Pruitt, seeking guardianship of Edna Marsh on grounds of diminished capacity following a stroke, and cross-filing to quiet title in the Schoolhouse tract in favor of Route 9 aggregate." "I've read it," the judge said. "Get to what's new, counselor. I already denied your emergency motion Friday. Your Honor, we'd also like the court to take note that the reverter deed submitted by opposing counsel is of questionable provenance," Pruitt said. "No living witness to its original filing. Carved initials instead of formal notarization on later modifications to the property. We believe this document may have been fabricated or altered to support a claim that didn't exist until Mrs. Marsh's hospitalization created a financial incentive to find one." A murmur ran the gallery. Dale looked down at his hands. Connie didn't look up at all. Vivian stood. "Your Honor, may I respond?" "Go ahead." "The deed in question is not a document opposing counsel is seeing for the first time," Vivian said. "It's Book 14, page 92, filed in this county in 1938, and it is also preserved on microfilm predating the courthouse fire of 1952. I have a certified copy from the county recorder's office, stamped this past Friday evening." She crossed the floor and set it on the clerk's desk. "This isn't a document my client produced. It's a document the state of West Virginia has kept on file for 88 years. The judge took it, turned it over once, read the top line, and looked up. "Odell Ferris," he said. "I remember that name. My grandfather knew him. As for the carved initials counsel mentioned," Vivian said, "those aren't part of the deed. They're on a door frame inside the schoolhouse cloakroom, put there by Mrs. Marsh's late husband, Walton Marsh, the same year he built the cabinets in that room. I have a witness present who watched him carve them." "Call your witness," the judge said. Silas Boone stood up from the gallery bench slower than he used to, one hand on the rail, and made his way to the front of the room. Pruitt half rose. "Your Honor, this witness wasn't on any filed list. He's on my list now," the judge said. "Sit down, counselor. I'd like to hear this." Silas took the chair beside the clerk's stand, and the bailiff swore him in, and for a moment the whole courtroom went as quiet as the gravel lot had gone the night the deputy's flashlight found the cloakroom door. "Mr. Boone," Vivian said, "how do you know Walton Marsh?" "Worked beside him 20-some years for the county," Silas said. "Built that cloakroom's cabinets with him myself, summer of 1961. And the initials in the doorframe, I watched him cut them," Silas said. "Little jackknife, not much bigger than his thumb. Said a man ought to sign his own work same as he signs a check. Wasn't hiding anything. Wasn't forging anything either. Man was proud of a wall he built with his own 2 hands, and he wanted it known. Dale was staring at the floor now. Connie had stopped twisting the tissue and just held it, wadded tight in her fist. "One more thing, Your Honor," Silas said, before anybody asked him to. "That wall's held for 65 years through everything this county's thrown at it. Flood, condemnation, a demolition crew last Saturday night. I don't figure a lawyer calling it questionable is going to be the thing that finally brings it down." A few people in the gallery laughed, short and low, and the judge didn't stop them. "Thank you, Mr. Boone," the judge said. "You can step down." He looked over his glasses at Pruitt. "Counselor, unless you've got something besides suspicion, I'm inclined to find this deed authentic on its face. Recorder's certification and 88 years of public filing being about as solid as evidence gets in this county." Pruitt sat down without answering, and beside him Dale finally looked up, first at the judge, then slow, across the room, at his mother. Edna didn't look away from him. She'd waited 11 days for this room, and she wasn't going to spend it staring at her own hands. Judge Talbot took off his glasses and set them on the bench in front of him, the way he did, Edna guessed, when he wanted people to know he meant what came next. "I've got 2 matters here," he said. "Let me take them one at a time so nobody leaves this room confused." He looked at Pruitt first. "The guardianship petition. I already denied the emergency motion Friday. Nothing filed today changes my mind. Mrs. Marsh priced her own mineral rights to the dollar. She caught a fabrication claim on a deed before her own lawyer did. That's not diminished capacity. That's a sharp old woman who got underestimated." Connie made a small sound, not quite a word. "Petition for guardianship is dismissed," the judge said, "with prejudice. Don't bring it back in front of me." Vivian didn't smile. She just wrote something down, calm, like she'd expected exactly that sentence in exactly that order. "Now the deed," Judge Talbot said. "Book 14, page 92, filed 1938. I've got a certified copy from the county recorder, I've got sworn testimony from a man who watched the initials get carved, and I've got no evidence in front of me that contradicts either one." He turned a page. "The deed says title reverts to the grantor's heirs the day that building stopped serving as a public school. Bellwood School closed its doors in 1988. That's not in dispute. Nobody's filed anything since to say otherwise." "Your Honor," Pruitt started, "the family understood the county held clear title. That's what the tax record." "The tax record's wrong," the judge said. "It's been wrong 38 years, and nobody caught it because nobody looked. That happens in this county more than I'd like. But wrong that long doesn't make it right today." He looked over at Dale now, not unkind, just plain. "Mr. Marsh, Mrs. Pruitt, I understand you believed you were selling something the county owned free and clear. I believe that, but belief doesn't transfer title you don't have. The reverter clause means ownership passed to Edna Marsh the day that school closed, 1988, long before either of you signed anything for Route 9. So, the sale," Dale said, voice thinner than Edna had heard it in years. "The sale is void," the judge said. "Route 9. Aggregate never had valid title to convey because you never had valid title to sell. $14,000 changes hands back to Route 9, and title to the tract, Cloakroom included, sits with Edna Marsh, full and clear, as of this morning." The gallery didn't gasp, not the way it might in a courtroom drama. It just went still, the kind of still Edna remembered from a classroom right before a test, everybody doing arithmetic in their own head at the same time. Foster Gaines in the 3rd row nodded once to himself and wrote something on the back of a business card. "One more thing," the judge said, looking at Vivian. "Counsel, I understand there's a standing lease offer from Cumberland Ridge Energy tied to this tract. There is, Your Honor, $1.3 million in signing bonus plus royalty terms contingent on clear title. Then I expect that offer runs to Mrs. Marsh now," the judge said, "not to anyone who signed a deed they didn't own." He picked his glasses back up. "This court's adjourned on both matters." The bailiff said something about all rising, and chairs scraped again, and Edna stood up on her own, cane steady, before Silas could reach her elbow. Dale hadn't moved from his seat. He was staring at the space on the table where his lawyer's folder sat closed now, like the folder itself had let him down. Connie was crying for real this time, quiet, into a fresh tissue, and it didn't look like a performance anymore. Vivian leaned over to Edna. "That's it," she said. "Clean as I've ever seen one go." "Feels different than I thought it would," Edna said. "They usually do," Vivian said. Out in the hallway, floor tile echoing under everybody's shoes, Dale caught up to her by the water fountain. Connie trailed behind him, tissue still balled in her fist. "Mom!" Dale said. Edna stopped. Silas stayed a step back, giving them room, though she noticed he didn't go far. "I don't know what to say to you," Dale said. "You said plenty already," Edna said. "Told a nurse it was just an old schoolhouse. Nobody wants a moldy cloakroom." Dale flinched like she'd hit him. "Turns out somebody wanted it 88 years ago," Edna said. "Your father wanted it enough to build a wall nobody could pull down. I wanted it enough to ask for a crowbar instead of a hospital gown. Route 9 wanted it enough to send emails 8 months before you ever picked up a phone." "We didn't know," Dale said, quieter now. "I know you didn't," Edna said. "That's the whole trouble." Connie stepped up beside him. "Mama, the money," she said. "We already spent it. The truck, my card. Some of it went toward Katie's wedding deposit." "I know what you spent it on," Edna said. $14,000. 6 on a truck, 3,400 on a card, 2,000 on a wedding you didn't ask me to help pay for, and the rest on my own hospital bill, which I never asked either of you to cover. Nobody said anything to that. Route 9's getting their 14,000 back," Edna said. "That's the judge's order, not mine. Where you find it is your business." "We don't have it," Dale said. "Not sitting in an account. It's gone into a truck payment and a credit card balance and a caterer's deposit." "Then you'll find a way," Edna said. "Same as I found a way to pay my own light bill 38 years on a teacher's salary while you two grew up in a house that never once went without." Silas cleared his throat behind her, gentle, just enough to remind everybody the hallway wasn't empty. "I've got a lease offer waiting on my kitchen table," Edna said. $1.3 million, signing bonus alone, before a single royalty check. I could let you two sit in whatever you've dug for yourselves. I could also choose not to." Dale looked up at that, something careful in his face, not quite hope. "I haven't decided which," Edna said. "I want that understood plain. Not today. Not in this hallway." Connie nodded fast, like nodding might help. "You'll hear from Vivian," Edna said. "Both of you. When I've decided." She turned and let Silas walk her toward the courthouse doors, cane tapping steady on the tile, and behind her she heard Connie start crying again, and Dale not saying anything at all, which from him might have been the truest thing he'd managed all morning. Outside, the clouds had broken up some, sun coming through in patches over the parking lot, and Foster Gaines was waiting by his car, that same business card still in his hand. "Mrs. Marsh," he said, "Cumberland Ridge is going to want a signature meeting soon as you're ready. I'd guess by the end of the week, if that suits you." "It suits me," Edna said, "though I expect I'll want my own lawyer reading every line first." "Wouldn't want it any other way," Gaines said. "Company that skips that step is a company you shouldn't sign with." He shook her hand again, careful, and got in his car, and Vivian came down the courthouse steps behind them with her folder tucked under one arm. "I'll draw up the Cumberland Ridge review for Thursday," Vivian said. "Give you a few days to just sit with today first." "A few days," Edna said, testing the words like they didn't quite fit yet. "You earned them," Silas said. They walked to his truck across the lot, past the spot where Dale's crooked parked car still sat, and Edna looked back once at the courthouse, brick gone warm now in the breaking sun, and thought about how quiet a room could get when the right piece of paper finally landed on the right desk. Silas's truck smelled like coffee and old vinyl, the same as it had for 20 years. He drove slow through Cutter's Gap, past the feed store, past the diner where 2 women stood on the sidewalk watching them go by like they already knew. "Word travels fast in this town," Edna said. "Always has," Silas said. "Judge dismisses a guardianship petition by 10 in the morning. Whole county knows by lunch." She looked out the window at the ridge, green and wet-looking under the broken clouds. "I keep waiting to feel something bigger than tired." "Give it a day," Silas said. "Big things come in slow, mostly. Not like in the movies." They didn't say much after that. Edna watched the guardrails go by, the creek flashing silver under the Route 9 bridge, the schoolhouse roof coming into view at the bend the way it always had. 38 years of driving that same curve to open a classroom at 7 in the morning. At her house, the phone was already ringing when Silas walked her up the porch steps. She got to it on the fourth ring. "Edna, it's Vivian. Just wanted you to hear it from me before the paper runs it tomorrow." "Runs what?" "Recorder's office confirmed the reversion is recorded clean, official as of 11:40 this morning. Route 9. Aggregates already wired the 14,000 back to the court registry. Foster Gaines doesn't want any part of a fight over it." That was fast. "Man doesn't want his name near a bad title twice," Vivian said. "Now." "Cumberland Ridge called my office an hour ago. They want Thursday. 10 o'clock, my conference room, their landman and their lawyer both. I'll be there." "One more thing," Vivian said. "You should know your son's been calling around town. Might be smart to answer if he shows up before I see you." Edna set the phone down and looked at Silas, who was still standing by the door, cane of his own leaning against the frame, though he didn't use it half so much as she used hers. "Dale's calling around," she said. "Calling around asking what?" Silas said. "I expect asking whether people think I've decided anything yet." She didn't have to wait long to find out. Dale's car came up the gravel drive that same afternoon, dust rising behind it, and he parked it crooked again, same as he had outside the courthouse. He came up the steps slow, hands in his pockets, and knocked even though the door was open. "Mom, come in if you're coming in," Edna said. "Don't stand there letting the flies through the screen." He came in and stood in her kitchen like a man who'd forgotten where anything was, though he'd grown up eating breakfast at that same table for 18 years. Connie wasn't with him this time. "I brought something," he said, and set an envelope on the table. "Not manila, a plain white one, thin." "What is it?" $4,000, Dale said. "It's what I could pull together. Sold the truck back to the dealer, took a loss on it, but I got 4 out of it. I know it's not the 6 I owe on my half. I'll get the rest." Edna didn't touch the envelope. "You sold the truck." "Had to start somewhere," he said. "Figured it made more sense than owing you and driving something I bought with money that wasn't mine to spend." She looked at him a long moment, the boy who used to sit right there at that table doing long division while she graded papers 3 feet away, and the man standing in front of her now, gray coming in at his temples, looking like he hadn't slept right in a week. "Connie's not with you," Edna said. "Connie's ashamed," Dale said. "Won't say it that way, but that's what it is. She's trying to figure how to give back the wedding money without telling Katie where it came from in the first place. That's a conversation she'll have to have herself." "I know it." Edna finally reached out and slid the envelope toward her, but she didn't open it. "I'm not going to pretend $4,000 fixes what happened in that hospital room." "I'm not asking it to," Dale said. "I know what I said to that nurse. I've heard it back in my own head about 100 times since Monday. Say it to me then. Not to a nurse, not to a judge. To me." Dale's jaw worked for a second before anything came out. "I said nobody wants a moldy cloakroom. I said it like the whole building wasn't worth the trouble of driving out to look at twice. And the whole time, you were lying in that bed asking me for a crowbar instead of a wheelchair, and I didn't even ask you why." "No," Edna said, "you didn't. I should have asked why. You should have asked a lot of things before you signed a paper for $14,000 on something your father built with his own hands." He looked down at the table. "I keep thinking about that too. Dad and that cloakroom. I don't even remember him building it. I was too little." "You were 3, Edna said. "Silas was there." "I wasn't, hardly. I was carrying your sister at the time, and the doctor had me resting. But your father came home every night that summer with sawdust in his hair, so proud of that wall he could hardly eat his supper before he told me about it." Dale pulled out a chair and sat down without being asked, which Edna let pass without comment. "What happens now?" he said. "With the land, the lease money. That's not settled yet." "I'm not asking for a piece of it," Dale said. "I want that understood. I'm not sitting in your kitchen angling for a check." "Good," Edna said, "because you wouldn't get one by angling. You might get one by earning it, though that's a different thing, and it isn't up to you how long it takes." He nodded slow, like he was working out the shape of that sentence. "There's a reading room," Edna said. "Was, anyway, off the main hall, past the cloakroom. Roof's caved through in one corner. If Cumberland Ridge's money comes through the way Vivian says it will, I mean to fix that room before anything else. Put a sign over the door with your father's name on it. You'd do that before you fix the roof over your own house." "My roof's fine," Edna said. Your father's roof wasn't, and it sat that way 11 years because nobody thought it mattered enough to climb a ladder for. Dale was quiet a moment. I could climb a ladder, he said. I mean it. I'm not much of a carpenter, but I can carry lumber, I can paint, I can do whatever a man with 2 hands and no other skills is good for. No charge, not for the 4,000, not for anything, just because it's his. Edna studied her son's face for a long moment, the way she used to study a boy at the back of her classroom trying to decide if a promise was real or just something said to end a conversation. I'll think about that, she said. I'm not saying yes today. I said the same to you outside that courthouse, and I'll say it again now. Not everything gets decided in one afternoon. That's fair, Dale said. You can leave the envelope, Edna said. I'll have Vivian log it against what you owe. And Dale. He looked up. Next time you come out here, bring your sister. I'd rather hear from both of you than piece it together second-hand. I'll tell her, Dale said. He stood, pushed the chair back in careful, like he was trying to leave the kitchen exactly the way he'd found it, and let himself out. Edna watched his car back down the gravel drive through the window over the sink, straighter this time than it had gone in. Silas came in from the porch where he'd been sitting the whole while, giving them room. Heard some of that through the screen, he said. Didn't mean to. I know you did, Edna said. You always do. He mean it? About the ladder? I don't know yet, Edna said. But it's the first thing either of them said to me since Monday that didn't have a dollar figure attached to it going the wrong direction. She picked up the white envelope and set it on the shelf by the door, next to the manila one that still hadn't been opened, the one holding Dale and Connie's signatures on a sale that didn't exist anymore. 2 envelopes now, side by side. One full of what they'd taken and one full of what they were starting, slow, to give back. Thursday, Silas said. Cumberland Ridge. Thursday, Edna said. I expect that's the day this stops being a story about what my children did and starts being a story about what gets built. Outside, the sun had come all the way through the clouds, and the ridge above Bellwood Creek stood green and steady, the way it had every summer of her life, patient as the schoolhouse itself, waiting on somebody to finish the work Walton had started. Thursday morning came in gray and warm, fog sitting low over Bellwood Creek when Silas pulled his truck up to the law office on Main. Vivian's conference room smelled like coffee and new carpet. A man in a golf shirt sat at the far end of the table, a laptop open in front of him. A woman beside him in a blazer with a leather folder marked Cumberland Ridge Energy, LLC. Mrs. Marsh, the man said, standing. Ray Delacroix. I handle acquisitions for Cumberland Ridge. This is Patricia Ames, our landman. Foster Gaines said you'd want Thursday, Edna said. Here I am. We appreciate it, Delacroix said, and we appreciate your patience while the title cleared. Vivian sat at Edna's right, folder already open, a yellow legal pad in front of her covered in her own handwriting. Silas took the chair by the window and said nothing, the way he always did in rooms like this, just watching. Let's walk through it plain, Vivian said. Mrs. Marsh doesn't want surprises, and neither do I. Fair enough, Delacroix said. He turned the laptop so the numbers faced her. 1.3 million in signing bonus, 200,000 payable at execution. The remaining 1.1 million across 90 days tied to survey completion. And the royalty, Edna said. 18%, Ames said. On gross production, no post-production deductions. That's higher than most operators offer in this county. Most run 12 and a half. Why higher? Edna said. Because your tract sits over the best part of the formation, Ames said. We ran the seismic ourselves back in the spring. We don't pay 18% because we're generous, Mrs. Marsh. We pay it because the rock underneath your schoolhouse is worth it. Edna liked that answer better than a kind one would have been. Go on. 5-year primary term, Delacroix said. Automatic extension if we're producing by year 5. Surface use restricted to the northeast corner of the tract, away from the building itself. We'll put that in writing. No pad, no access road, nothing within 400 feet of the schoolhouse. Why keep it that far off, Edna asked. Because you told Foster Gaines you meant to reopen part of that building, Delacroix said. We'd just as soon not drill next to a schoolroom somebody's fixing up. Looks bad in a photograph, and Cumberland Ridge doesn't need the photograph. Vivian made a note on her pad and didn't look up. I'll want that 400 feet in the lease itself, not a side letter. In the lease. That's where it'll sit, Delacroix said. Edna looked at the number on the screen again, 200,000 at signing, and thought about the manila envelope still sitting on her kitchen shelf, unopened, the one with $14,000 written all over it in her children's mistakes. "I want something else in there too," Edna said. Delacroix looked up. "Ma'am? A clause?" "Same kind my husband put in, near as Vivian can draft it to match. If Cumberland Ridge ever stops producing and lets that lease go fallow for more than 2 years running, the surface rights on that 400 feet revert to whoever's teaching in that schoolroom at the time. Not to me, not to my children, to the school." The room went quiet for a second. Ames actually smiled. "You want to write your own reverter clause?" she said. "I've seen what one's worth," Edna said. "Man built the first one out of 2x4s and never told a soul. I don't see why I can't build mine out of paper and put it where everybody can read it." "I'll need to run that past our council in Charleston," Delacroix said, "but I don't see them fighting you on it. It's a good clause, protects everybody." "It's not for everybody," Edna said. "It's for whoever teaches in that room after I'm gone. That's who it's for." Vivian wrote something else down, underlined it twice. They went through the rest of it slower than Edna expected. Delacroix reading clauses aloud, and Vivian stopping him twice to strike a line, and once to add one. And by 11:30, there was a stack of paper in front of Edna with her name typed at the bottom of every page, waiting on a signature. "Take your time," Vivian said. "Nobody in this room's going anywhere." Edna read every page herself, slow, the way she'd read 100 report cards before signing off on a grade she wanted to be sure of. Silas watched her read. Nobody hurried her. When she finished, she picked up the pen Vivian had set beside her hand and signed her name on the last page, then the one before it, then worked her way backward through the stack the way she'd have graded a test, checking her own work as she went. 200,000 wires within 5 business days, Delacroix said, sliding the signed pages back into his folder. "You'll hear from our escrow office by Tuesday at the latest." "I've got a bank," Edna said. "Cutter's Gap Savings. Same one my husband used. I expect they'll know what to do with it." "They'll know," Delacroix said, and something in his face said he meant more than the wire transfer. That word of the tin box and the numbered key had made its way even into a golf shirt from Charleston. Ames stood and shook Edna's hand, firm, no pity in it at all, which Edna appreciated more than she'd have said out loud. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Marsh, we don't usually meet the landowner. Most of these tracts we're dealing with a trust or an estate lawyer 3 states off. This was better." "Better how?" Edna said. "You knew every line of your own lease," Ames said. "Most people just want the check." "I wanted the check too," Edna said. "I just wanted the room more." They left with handshakes all around. Delacroix's laptop closed under his arm, and Vivian gathered her own folder and walked Edna and Silas out to the sidewalk. $200,000 Tuesday, Vivian said. "And that's before a single royalty check ever comes. Feels like somebody else's number," Edna said. "It's yours," Vivian said. "Every dollar of it. Clean title, clean deed, clean signature." She hesitated. "Your phone's probably already ringing, by the way. Connie called my office twice yesterday. I didn't call back. Figured that one was yours to handle, not mine. What did she want?" "Same thing Dale wanted, I expect. To know where she stands." Vivian tucked her folder under her arm. "I told my assistant to just say you'd be in touch when you were ready. You don't owe anybody a phone call today." Edna nodded slow. She thought about Connie's tissue balled up in her fist outside the courthouse, about the wedding deposit, about a granddaughter named Katie who hadn't done a thing wrong in any of it and didn't deserve to have her wedding tangled up with a piece of land she'd never once seen. "I'll call her Sunday," Edna said. "Not today." "Sunday's fine," Vivian said. "The land's not going anywhere. Neither's the money." Silas drove her home the long way, past the schoolhouse instead of straight up the county road, and slowed the truck without being asked when the building came into view at the bend. The condemned notice was still nailed to the door, curling at one corner now from the last week of damp weather. The demolition stakes, Route 9. Aggregate had driven into the yard back before any of this started were still standing too, orange flags gone gray with dust. "Somebody ought to pull those stakes," Silas said. "I've got a claw hammer in the shed," Edna said. "You've got 2 good hands." He laughed, short, and pulled the truck onto the gravel shoulder instead of driving on. They walked up together, cane and all, and Silas worked the first stake loose with his bare hands while Edna stood at the gate and looked at the building the way she used to look at it every morning for 38 years, waiting on the first bus to round the bend. "You said you wanted a sign over the reading room door," Silas said, not looking up from the second stake. "For Walton." "I did. I could build it," he said. "Same joinery he used on that cloakroom wall. Same wood, if I can find cherry that old. Wouldn't be much of a stretch. I watched him cut every board in that room in 1961. I remember how he squared the corners. You'd do that." "I built half that wall standing next to him," Silas said. "Feels wrong somebody else's hands finish it." Edna looked at the caved corner of the roof, visible even from the gate, a dark gap in the shingles where 11 years of weather had gotten in and no one had climbed a ladder to stop it. "Roof first," she said. "Sign after. Man can't read a name over a door if the rain's coming through onto his head while he does it." "Roof first," Silas agreed, and pulled the last stake, and tossed it into the truck bed where it landed with a small metal sound, final as a door closing. They stood at the gate a while longer, the fog burning off slow over the ridge, the creek running loud under the Route 9 bridge the way it always did after a wet week, and Edna thought about a phone call still waiting for Sunday, and a checkbook that would need writing soon for lumber and shingles and whatever else it took to put a room back the way a man had built it to last. $200,000, she said, mostly to herself. "First thing that's coming out of it is a roof." "Second thing," Silas said. "What's the first?" "Paying Route 9. Aggregates 14,000 back to the court registry proper, so your children's names are clear of it," Silas said. "You know that, or you wouldn't have signed the way you signed today." Edna didn't answer that directly. She just turned back toward the truck, Kane finding the gravel sure and steady, and let the schoolhouse sit behind her in the thinning fog, patient as it had always been, waiting on somebody to finally finish what got started in 1961. 2 days later, the roof crew showed up before 8. 3 men out of Silas's old maintenance contacts, all retired county road workers who'd known Walton Marsh well enough to work cheap out of respect and not much else. Edna paid them anyway, $40 an hour, cash, out of an envelope she'd walked into Cutter's Gap Savings and asked for special 20s folded flat. "You don't have to pay union rate for 3 old men and a ladder," Silas said, watching her count it out on the truck's tailgate. "I don't have to do a lot of things," Edna said. "I want them paid fair. Walton always said a man's labor's worth what it's worth, not what he'll settle for." By noon they'd stripped the caved corner down to the rafters. Edna stood at the gate with her cane, watching daylight show through where it hadn't shown through in 11 years, and one of the men, a heavy-set fellow named Purdy, called down from the ladder. "Mrs. Marsh, there's rot clear back to this second joist. Whoever built this held it together with prayer and roofing tar since Reagan was president." "Since 1988, Edna said. "That's when the county shut the doors. Nobody prayed over it after that. It just sat." "Well, it's done sitting," Purdy said, and went back to prying shingles. Silas worked the ground crew, cutting new rafter stock on a pair of sawhorses he'd hauled up from his own place, and Edna spent the morning inside the cloakroom, sweeping plaster dust off Walton's cabinets with an old classroom broom she'd kept in her trunk since June without knowing why. That was where she found the carving. She was running her hand along the doorframe, the one Walton had squared himself, checking for rot the way she'd checked report cards for a wrong answer, when her fingers caught on a groove, low near the baseboard, half hidden under 60 years of paint. She knelt, slow. Cane laid across her knees and rubbed at it with her thumb until the paint flaked away enough to read. W.M. 1961. "Silas?" she called, and something in her voice brought him through the door faster than his knees usually let him move. "What is it? Come look at this." He knelt beside her, groaning some, and ran his own thumb over the letters. "Well, I'll be," he said. "I forgot he did that." "You knew. I watched him do it. Last day we worked on this room, he had a nail left over and no more boards to hang, so he scratched his initials in the frame low down where nobody'd think to look unless they were kneeling right where you're kneeling. Said a man ought to sign his own work, same as a painter signs a canvas." Silas sat back on his heels. "I'd have told you sooner, but I hadn't thought of it in years. Some things a man just forgets he saw." "It matters now," Edna said. "Vivian says, Route 9. Aggregate's lawyer might still try and claim the wall was altered after the original construction, try and say the panels new, put in after the sale to manufacture a hiding place. She shook her head at the strangeness of that sentence, that anybody could look at a rusted tin box and a rotted hollow and think it was staged for money. This puts a date on his work. 1961, same year the deed says the cabinets went in, same year he told me about the sawdust in his hair. Won't nobody argue with a man's own carving, Silas said, not once the wood's tested. Vivian's already sent a sample to a lab in Charleston, Edna said. Growth rings, finish oxidation, all of it. She says it'll come back matching the rest of the room within a week. She thinks of everything, that woman. She thinks of what I forget to, Edna said, which is most things lately, some days. They knelt there a moment longer, two old people on a plaster-dusted floor looking at a dead man's signature, and then Silas got up first and offered her his hand, which she took without argument, because pride was one thing and a bad knee on a cold floor was another. Her phone rang Sunday afternoon while she was shelling beans on the porch. Connie's name on the screen, same as always. "Mama," Connie said, and her voice had none of the sharp edge it carried outside the courthouse. "I've been waiting for you to call, but I figured I'd just go ahead." "I said Sunday," Edna said. "It's Sunday." "I know. Connie stopped. "Katie asked me yesterday if the wedding's still on. I told her yes. I didn't know if that was a lie." "It's not a lie," Edna said. "I never said I'd take a wedding down over this. Dale told me he came out to your place. Brought money. He did." "I've got some too," Connie said. "Not the full 2,000. I can do 600 now, the rest by fall, once I've got the credit card built back up enough breathing room to spare it." Her voice thinned. "I know that's slow." "Slow's fine," Edna said. "Slow beats never, and it beats spending what you don't have again trying to catch up faster than you can." "I keep thinking about the schoolhouse," Connie said. "I taught myself to read in that room. Kindergarten, Mrs. Halloran's class, before you even had me in your own room in 3rd grade. I don't know why I forgot that when Dale called about the offer. I just saw a number." "Numbers do that to people," Edna said. "It's why your father never told anybody what he built. He knew a number would have had somebody tearing that wall down for scrap the week after he died if they'd known there was a reason to look." "Was there money in it?" Connie asked, quiet. "The wall. Everybody in town's saying different things. Some say cash, some say gold. Dale won't tell me straight." "There was a key," Edna said. "Rest of it's still Vivian's business and mine till the paperwork's settled. I'll tell you and your brother together when it's time. Not piecemeal over the phone." "That's fair," Connie said. And then, after a pause, "I'm sorry, Mama, for the line about the wedding deposit. I said it like the schoolhouse owed us something. It didn't owe us anything. We owed it." Edna let that sit a moment before she answered, the way she used to let a hard question sit in a classroom until somebody worked it out on their own instead of being handed the answer. "I heard you," she said. "That's enough for today. Bring Katie out sometime before the wedding. I'd like to see the room she learned her letters in, if there's anything left to see once the sign's up." "What sign?" "You'll see it when it's hung," Edna said, and left it there, because some things a mother's allowed to keep to herself a little longer. She hung up and went back to her beans, and Silas came around the side of the porch with sawdust on his shoulders, cherry-colored dust that hadn't come from any tree on her property. "Found a board," he said. "Fellow over in Marlinton had a cherry log milled 40 years back, seasoned in his barn ever since, waiting on nothing in particular. Sold it to me for $60 once I told him what it was for." $60, Edna said. "Walton would have called that a steal." "He'd have called it exactly what it cost," Silas said. "Man never haggled over lumber in his life. Said good wood was good wood and a fair price was a fair price, and anybody who dickered over either one didn't respect the tree it came from." He set the board across 2 sawhorses at the edge of the porch and ran a plane down it once, slow, curling a long, pale shaving off the top that caught the evening light. "Same joinery," he said. "Dovetails at the corners, same as the cabinet doors inside. I'll cut the letters myself, router first, then clean it by hand the way he'd have done it, no shortcuts." "How long?" Edna asked. "A week, maybe less, if my hands cooperate." He ran his thumb along the grain. "Longer if I get to talking too much and forget to work." "You've been better company than either of my children this whole summer," Edna said. I don't mind you talking. Silas laughed, short and low, and kept planing, and Edna sat on the porch with her bowl of beans and watched the shavings pile up gold at his feet, thinking about a sign not yet cut, a name not yet lettered, and a room waiting behind a fresh roof for the one thing it had never had in 65 years, its own name over the door, spoken plain, for anybody driving the Route 9 bridge to read. Silas worked the sign through the week, coming by most afternoons with sawdust in his collar and less to say than usual, which was how Edna knew he was concentrating. He routed the letters deep, an inch each, then went over every one by hand with a chisel so the edges wouldn't look machine-cut. The Walton Marsh Schoolhouse, in serif letters wide enough to read from a truck window crossing the bridge. He'd have hated his name that big, Silas said, holding it up to the porch light to check the shadows in the grooves. He built a whole room nobody was supposed to find for 11 years, Edna said. I think he could stand a sign. Dale came out on a Thursday, no phone call first, just his truck in the drive and an envelope in his hand before he'd even said hello. 4,000, he said. That's the truck payment I skipped and half what's left on the card. Rest comes when the dealership refinances it lower. I talked to them Tuesday. Edna didn't reach for it right away. You didn't have to drive out here to hand it to me. Vivian's got an account set up for exactly this. I know, Dale said. I wanted to hand it to you myself. He looked past her at the schoolhouse roof, new shingles dark against the old gray ones still waiting to be replaced. Looks better already. Silas's crew, Edna said. Not mine. Dale nodded, turned the envelope over once in his hands like he wasn't sure the conversation was finished, then set it on the porch rail. I'm not going to stand here and make you tell me it's fine, he said. It isn't fine. I know that. He got back in the truck before she could answer, and drove off slower than he'd come, and Edna picked up the envelope and carried it inside without opening it, because some things a person pays back in installments, not in speeches. Katie came the following Saturday with Connie, a girl of 22 in cut-off jeans who'd been 3 years old the last time she'd set foot past the schoolhouse gate. She stood in the doorway of the reading room a long moment, looking at the cabinets Walton had built, the glass now fitted over the cloakroom's exposed hollow so visitors could see the stud bay itself. Empty now, the tin box gone to a shelf in Vivian's office for the lawyers to finish photographing. This is where I learned my letters? Katie asked. Right there, Edna said, pointing to a spot on the floor where a rug used to sit. You cried the first week. Wanted your mother. I don't remember that. I do, Edna said. I remember every one of you. Connie stood by the door with her arms crossed, not from cold. Katie wants to take pictures out front before the wedding, she said. For the invitations, maybe, if that's all right. It's more than all right, Edna said. Bring the whole party. Just mind the ladder Silas left by the north wall. That same week, Vivian called with news that had nothing to do with the Marsh family at all. A woman 2 counties over, name of Ruth Penny Baker, had read about the reverter clause in the Charleston paper and tracked down Vivian's office number herself. Her own grandfather had donated land for a schoolhouse in 1941, same kind of clause buried in the same kind of deed book, and the county there had leased her family's old schoolyard to a gravel operation the year before without anybody checking the title at all. I pulled the book this morning, Vivian told Edna over the phone. Same language, near enough. I called Ruth back an hour ago, told her she might own that gravel lease outright once the paperwork clears. She know that yet? She cried on the phone, Vivian said. Same as you didn't. I don't cry on phones, Edna said. I cry over cabinets. I noticed, Vivian said, and there was something warm under the dry note in her voice. I'm sending the county clerk's office a letter next week, asking them to flag every pre-1950 conveyance with a reverter clause before they process another lease off a shuttered public building. They said they'd never thought to look. Somebody should have thought to look before Walton had to build a wall to make sure of it, Edna said. Somebody's thinking of it now, Vivian said. That's the best a person can do about the years already gone. The reading room reopened on a Tuesday in September. No ribbon, no speeches, just Edna unlocking the front door herself with a key Silas had cut to match the old brass one. Though it opened nothing so dramatic as a tin box, only the same door it had always opened. She'd had the walls whitewashed, the floor sanded and oiled, the old chalkboard rehung where it had hung since 1961. Route 9 traffic still rumbled over the truss bridge outside, same as it had every day of her life, but the schoolhouse didn't shake with it the way it used to, not since the new roof had gone on and the foundation been shored where the water damage had gotten in. Silas hung the sign himself, standing on a stepladder with Edna holding the bottom rail steady, though she suspected he didn't need the steadying half as much as he let on. "Straight?" he asked, squinting along the top edge. "Straight enough that Walton would have squared it anyway," Edna said. "Hang it." He drove the last screw in, climbed down slower than he'd climbed up, and they both stood back in the gravel lot to look at it, the same lot where a flatbed had once idled with its engine running and a foreman had waited on a word from Dale that never should have been his to give. The Walton Marsh schoolhouse, cut into cherry, a man had planed himself, hanging over a door that had never once, in 65 years, had its own name spoken over it out loud. He'd have said it was too much sign for too small a building, Silas said. He'd have been wrong, Edna said. Building was never small, just nobody looked at it right till now. A gust came off the creek and through the open cloakroom window, the glass not yet fitted that week, and the old hollow behind the coat pegs let out a low note the way it always had in a cross breeze, the same sound generations of children had sworn all their lives was the building humming to itself in cold weather. Edna listened to it a moment, head tilted, and didn't say anything, because now she knew exactly what it was, and there wasn't a soul left to argue the ghost story with her, even if she'd wanted one. She walked into the cloakroom alone, coat over her arm, an old wool one that had hung on her own hook every winter she'd taught in this building. She lifted it to the row of pegs Walton had turned by hand in 1961, the wood worn smooth now from 65 years of small hands and cold mornings. She hung the coat on the first peg and left it there.